There is a possibility that Florida could be the very first state in the country to completely eliminate property taxes. Now, if anywhere can do it, I feel like Florida can do it. However, I would not get your hopes up because this was recently tried just in the last November election. In fact, 10 states in November had some form of property tax reform on their ballots. And the most notable one, which was to eliminate property taxes in North Dakota, failed. And I talked about this back in November, shortly after the election happened. And basically what happened there is they had it on the ballot to eliminate property taxes in North Dakota, and they barely even got 37% of the vote there. And to put into perspective, here in Florida, we need to get 60% of voters to approve a constitutional amendment to abolish property taxes here in Florida. So in North Dakota, they only got 37%, not even close to what they would need. And my concern is that even if this does make it to the ballot here in Florida for the November election, that it is probably not going to pass. This is something that probably would need to be on the ballot a couple of times, maybe even few times, in order for it to even have a potential at passing. Because until people fully understand how this might work and how it's going to affect them, then I think a lot of people are just going to err on the side of caution and vote it down, which is unfortunate because property taxes is literally the largest form of theft and fraud that we have in this country. I've covered this with a video on my channel with Mitch Vexler, also my friend Travis over at Real Estate Mindset. Him and Mitch have really been leading the charge in Texas to try and abolish property taxes over there. And the reason is because the property taxes that are collected on our homes are collected fraudulently. They're collected on fraudulent evaluations. A large percentage of the taxes go to school districts, which has a massive amount of fraud wrapped up in it. And the biggest problem, of course, is that you never truly own your home when you have to pay property taxes, because even if you have a paid off house, every single year you're gonna get that property tax bill. And if for some reason you fall on hard times and you can't pay it, you will not own that house for very much longer, maybe a couple more years, until the county puts a lien on your property and you end up being foreclosed on and forced out of your own property that you supposedly own. Now, the reason why this is a big deal lately is because Ron DeSantis, who is the governor here in Florida, recently said on X that he would support a measure where they would eliminate property taxes here in Florida. He pretty much said that he's in favor of doing this, and that, you know, property taxes are collected on the local level, not on the state level. So it would require a constitutional amendment, but he would be in favor of it. And something we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video is the massive surge in inventory that we're seeing here in Florida. And a lot of it has to do with the rising costs of homeownership. You know, we have two major expenses here in Florida that have essentially become unaffordable. One is property taxes, one is homeowners insurance. And after people buy a house, people are often shocked by just how much the property taxes can go up, because once you purchase a home, the year after you buy that house, your property taxes are going to be reassessed based on the price you purchased the house for. So your property taxes can easily go up double or triple in some cases, depending on how much the previous owner was paying. But the reason why I think this is not going to pass, even if it makes it onto the ballot this November, is because there is going to be a massive pushback from local governments across the state, because they basically rely on property taxes to feed their annual budgets. Even here in Miami-Dade, they're talking about increasing property taxes because our DMV system here in Miami is completely broken, guys. For anybody who saw my videos in Orlando about a week ago, after I was in Orlando, I ended up going over to Palm Coast because my wife needed to go to the DMV to get a new driver's license. And you could not get an appointment here in Miami until the end of March. And then we were trying in January to get an appointment. So that was just not gonna happen, okay? So we were already up in the area anyways. I figured, let's go to a DMV where we can actually get this done. And we were there for less than an hour. Everything got finished, no appointments. Here in Miami, you need to have an appointment, and you can't get an appointment for 3 months. But they want to raise property taxes here by hundreds of millions of dollars in order to fix the broken DMV system. And in case you're unaware, property taxes kind of float the bill for a lot of things. And that's why people would be probably voting this down initially until they could fully understand how different programs could be funded alternatively. It seems like the best way to go for taxes in general is some form of consumption tax. You know, when you buy something, we have sales taxes. Overseas in a lot of European countries, they have VAT taxes, which is called value added taxes. And those are all based on when you buy something, okay? But being reassessed and being charged taxes annually on something that you already purchased is a complete different story, and those taxes continue to rise regardless. But if people were just taxed based on what they bought, then it wouldn't be as much of an issue. And there are a lot of benefits that could come of this. First of all, you know, when you own your house, it will mean that you truly own your house. When you make that last mortgage payment, you will never have to worry ever again about somebody taking your home from you. Not the local government, not the mortgage company, nobody. That house will be yours in perpetuity, which is the way that it should be. Also, there'll be a tremendous amount of savings from property taxes being eliminated, and that extra money can be allocated to paying off your mortgage earlier, or to home improvements, or to just saving for retirement faster. Basically, furthering your financial goals faster in life rather than funding the local government. Renters would likely see a benefit to this as well, because you wouldn't see as steep of rent increases, because landlords wouldn't see their expenses increase by as much either. And landlords have to pay much higher property taxes, especially here in Florida, than somebody who lives in the house, for example, and has a homestead exemption. They get a much lower tax rate, and the cap on how much that tax can go up is also much lower. The assessed value for a homesteaded exemption here in Florida can only go up 3% each year maximum, but on a non-homesteaded property, that assessed value can jump by as much as 10% per year. So landlords get hammered with property taxes here in Florida, and I would argue is probably one of the biggest expenses that they have besides a mortgage. Also, all of the extra money that people are saving not paying property taxes, they will likely be outspending in the local economy, which would help a lot of local businesses thrive and the local economy do much better overall. People aren't spending all of their money just to pay the government. But there would be some downsides to this, at least in my opinion. The first downside, in my opinion, would be that if Florida would be the first state to eliminate property taxes, we're already a no income tax state. So that makes it very attractive for people to move here trying to escape high tax states. But if we were to eliminate property taxes, if you think the cost of housing is high here now, just wait until that happens, okay? This would become, the investment capital of the world, essentially, for buying real estate is what I believe would happen. Because since property taxes and insurance are the largest expenses any homeowner or investor, for that matter, has to pay for, if one of those major expenses gets eliminated, Florida just became an extremely attractive option for investors. And it won't be before long that home prices here shoot through the roof, guys. And a lot of people think that this is going to make housing more affordable because you're eliminating a portion of your mortgage payment, essentially. But a lot of people are overlooking how attractive of an opportunity this is going to be for outsiders to come in and buy property here, because there's no consequences. If you can buy a house in cash or any type of property in cash in Florida, which Florida is also ground zero for cash buyers in general as well, well, guess what? People are going to be coming here and doing that in droves, and it's very attractive to now be a landlord because one of your biggest expenses as a landlord also just got dropped. And so I could see bidding wars, and I could see a real housing shortage here in the sense that, there's going to be no houses left. Everybody's going to be buying them up like crazy because everybody wants to take advantage of the situation where there's no property taxes, because we would be the only state that has that advantage. If it was everywhere, it would be a different story. And so ultimately, I think what would happen if we actually eliminated property taxes and no other state did it, and Florida is already a very attractive option for people for a multitude of different reasons, we would just see home prices here probably get just as high as California, if not even higher, guys, maybe even being the most expensive in the nation within just a few years. That's my prediction of where this would go. Because even as a local, if I could buy a house in cash anywhere here in Florida, for example, and not have that annual property tax payment and just have to pay for upkeep on my house, that would be an extremely attractive option for me to even just buy a second home somewhere else here in Florida where I can bounce around the state. Like, I like going up to northern Florida and getting away from Miami. I would probably just own another house up there so I could just do that at my leisure and one less major expense to go along with it, you know? Also, there's a big unknown about how local governments would be funded going forward and how many local programs could be cut, especially when it comes to education, even though education has the largest amount of fraud when it comes to mismanaging and misspending our property tax money. People are still concerned that they're not going to get the dollars that they should be getting from it. However, one thing I've heard a lot of other people say about this is some of the missing funds that are no longer being collected in property taxes could now be made up for using the Florida lottery, because that brings in billions of dollars every single year in money to be used in Florida. But some other benefits of this happening would be the government would be kind of forced to only focus on essential services and real problems that need to be addressed. Like, for example, you can see that even on the national level, you know, these governments are always looking at, you know, tackling the most minute problems that make no difference in everybody's everyday life. You know, they're focusing on the minutia a lot of times and not on the real issues at hand that make a major impact on people's lives. So it is tricky, you know, because on the one hand, I feel like, and something I've been talking about forever here on the channel, is that property taxes should be eliminated. You know, I'm in favor of that, and I would probably vote yes for it. But I think we would be in for some unintended consequences that we might not be prepared for. And we might have a few rough years here in Florida through different problems that I mentioned here. We might have a few rough years here in Florida with some of the problems I mentioned that could come about from this. But really, I think it would be more effective if property taxes were eliminated in all states, or at least a good amount of them, so that way it would kind of level the playing field. Because when you just have one state that has no property taxes and all the rest of them do, where's everybody gonna go, you know? And speaking of fraud, something else that I've been meaning to talk about, but there's just been so many other pressing issues, is the Florida insurance companies and their fraud, okay? And we've talked about fraud and insurance companies here in Florida many times on the channel. And last fall, there was a 60-minute special about all of the homeowners here that were getting completely gypped and seeing their payouts dwindle due to the desk adjusters at these insurance companies pretty much writing down all of the losses and saying that they're not going to pay out. Well, fast forward to today, there is another fraud story that just came out from Florida. And basically what's happening is a lot of these insurance companies are doing exactly what I've been saying that they're doing, and people have been defending these companies in the comments. And what they're doing is they're crying that they're broke. They're crying that they're losing all of this money. But in the meantime, they're making billions of dollars through their affiliate companies. There was a recent report that revealed that Florida insurance companies distributed about $680 million in dividends to its shareholders while diverting billions of dollars more to their affiliate companies. And according to this report, these insurance companies were removing so much money from their companies that they actually violated state regulations. And so far, no punishment has been made. And as a result of this, a lot of these insurance companies went bankrupt when there's actually a lot of claims that needed to be paid out. Surprise, surprise. And then of course we had the so-called insurance reform here in Florida, which has since made it harder to sue insurance companies. So whenever they are doing something wrong or you're not getting the proper payout, it's much tougher to sue. And it's also much tougher to get a lawyer on your side to even bring a case to begin with. And basically what these companies are doing is they are crying that they are broke in order to raise premiums or to justify insolvency. And this is something I have suspected. This is something I've been saying here on the channel. And so many people, you know, stick up for the insurance companies. I have people that write me that say that they've worked for insurance companies and say, oh no, Michael, this doesn't happen. You know, we just break even on the policies. All of our earnings are made by investing the premiums into the market. Okay, so this report is all fake then, right? They have proof that's not what they're doing. But that's the only way that they make money, all on the up and up, just investing the premiums into the stock market. Okay, now the reason that a lot of people that work for the insurance companies think that everything is on the up and up is because the profits for insurance companies are limited by regulators to about 4.5%, which is not very enticing for investors, especially with the risk of hurricanes that we have here in Florida. However, insurance executives in Florida have used financial workarounds to reward investors and themselves. Because even though the profits and executive compensation of the insurance companies are capped by the Florida state law, the profits of affiliate and parent companies are not. So all they have to do is divert money to those companies, right? How do they do that? Well, they create sister companies that charge the insurance company for basic services, for things like claims handling, underwriting, accounting, issuing policies. They kind of outsource all of those things for their business to these affiliate companies, which are actually owned by the insurance companies themselves. And of course, they can charge whatever they want, usually giant fees that get wrote off as expenses for the insurance company, and at the same time is a massive windfall of income for the affiliate companies. And who benefits? All the beneficiaries of those affiliate companies. So it's one giant scam. Now, the arrangements between insurance companies and affiliates need to be approved by state regulators, but the law just says that these affiliates need to be fair and reasonable, which is not even defined in the law. So what is fair and reasonable if there's no actual legal definition of that? Could be anything. To give you an example, there was an insurance company here in Florida in 2022 that went under. They went insolvent. It was called FedNat. And it was one of the 9 corporations under a parent company. When Southern Fidelity Insurance went insolvent, it was one of 6 companies under the same parent company. And to just show you the fraud here, when Southern Fidelity Insurance went under, one of its holdings was a hunting lodge that maintained a cost of $485,000 per year using your insurance premiums. So tell me once again how that's not fraud. I would love anybody who works for the insurance companies to explain that to me. And here's the thing, a lot of these insurance companies here in Florida have similar arrangements, especially with the higher ups and the executives that make massive profits off of this and get all these perks like this hunting lodge or whatever. And apparently, one of the #1 reasons why insurance companies go insolvent here in Florida is because the affiliate companies, remember, that are owned by the insurance company, pretty much overcharge the insurance company to death for all their services to the point where the insurance company goes insolvent. So they can say, oh, sorry, we are closing up shop, and all the premiums you paid us over the years, yeah, those are gone. Because it was all stolen, guys. In fact, the ratings agency AM Best, they found that affiliate relationships were the 3rd leading cause of insolvencies nationwide, not just in Florida, between the years 2000 and 2022. And that's only after catastrophe losses and fraud. Well, these affiliate programs taking all the money is fraud. So pretty much the top 2 reasons then are fraud, and only actual real losses accounts for one of the reasons that these companies go insolvent. And they say, well, it's unlikely that Florida regulators knew the full scope of insurance money shifting arrangements until 2021, when lawmakers gave them the ability to demand more information from insurers and affiliates. Well, my guess is that a lot of these guys are probably in on it too. That's just an assumption. Don't know that for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. And just to give you an idea of how rampant this fraud is, take a look at this. Between 2017 and 2019, the insurers in this study showed a net loss of $432 million, okay? And in that same study, in the same years, the affiliate companies showed a net income of $1.8 billion. If that doesn't scream fraud, I don't know what does. And so far, they believe about 2/3 of the insurance companies here in Florida that were in this study found that they were paying fees to their affiliate companies that were found to be not fair and reasonable. So at least 2/3 of these insurance companies here are doing this. They're saying here, well, it's unclear why the Office of Insurance Regulation isn't doing anything about it. Well, I don't think it's really that unclear. Like I said, a lot of these people who are in charge of doing something about it are probably in on it. And the reason why I think that they're in on it is because regulators in 2023 were asked to include the fair and reasonable amount, define that. They were also asked to provide the actual cost of the services that these affiliates were providing to insurance companies. Also, insurance companies were asked to reveal how much in dividends were being paid out. And in 2023, Florida regulators rejected that because they said it would upset the apple cart. Maybe your apple cart? So, you know, Florida is a great place to live, guys, but the amount of fraud here is just really off the charts when it comes to insurance and property taxes, which are the two largest expenses that any homeowner here in the state has by far. And if we could actually eliminate property taxes and get all the insurance fraud under control, that would extremely lower how much it would cost for the average person to own their home. But going back to what I was saying earlier, that could be a problem in terms of long-term affordability, because it would just make Florida so attractive and so desirable to own real estate here that people from everywhere would be buying it up like hotcakes. That's what I think would happen. That's what my prediction would be if this were to pass. And the reason why I think that is because right now what we're seeing is the exact opposite, okay? Because property taxes and insurance are so high here, a lot of people are being forced to sell their homes, and that's why you're seeing this deluge of inventory in the state of Florida. Just the single family home inventory is up 37.6% year over year, not even counting the condo inventory. And now that inventory has gone up so much here in the state of Florida, a lot of sellers are finding themselves in situations where they have to perform massive price cuts to even be competitive or even have a chance at selling that property. And this problem has been growing for a long time now. Ever since the end of 2023, the inventory has been on the rise here in Florida and is so far showing no signs of slowing down because so many people cannot afford to keep these homes anymore. A lot of investors who bought during the COVID years are cashing out, trying to capitalize on the higher equity that the house has, or sometimes they're even selling for a loss because it's no longer profitable to be a landlord here. Here's a house that was sold back in 2022 for $1.8 million. And back at the end of 2023, it was listed for $5.9 million, which was well over a year ago. The house has been listed on and off the market, even up to $6.4 million during the last spring housing market in 2024, then back down to 5.9 million, then up to 6.1 again, and now fast forward to today, they are down to about 5.7 million with no buyers on this house. This house is probably going to be sitting empty for a couple more years before they get realistic on actually selling it for a price somebody would be willing to pay. But you know what, guys? It's not just Florida that is seeing an uptick in inventory across the country. In fact, there are 8 states right now that have higher inventory on the housing market than we did in 2019. So pre-pandemic levels of inventory were actually lower than they are today in Florida, in Texas, Idaho, Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Georgia. If you're looking to buy a house in any of those states, the odds are turning in your favor. And what I suspect is we're going to see more states start to see inventory levels that surpass pre-pandemic levels as more people get pinched by the insurance and property tax situation. And there's something else I want to address here before I go. A comment I see all the time, especially when it comes to the cost of housing and the cost of real estate. I talk a lot about how being a renter right now is significantly cheaper than being a homeowner. And a lot of the comments I see are things like this. Well, it's a catch-22. When real estate taxes and insurance go up, guess what? So do the rents. Landlords just pass it along to renters. Also, mortgage interest and real estate taxes are deductible on income taxes. Rents are not. Okay, when you hear statements like that, it is only partially true. And I'm telling you this as a former landlord. I was a landlord up until about a year ago and sold everything. Now, when expenses go up on a property, the first thing a landlord will attempt to do or want to do is to pass those expenses along to the tenant. However, if the rents that you're charging are already pretty much at market levels of rent, it is going to be near impossible to raise the rent on that property without making significant upgrades to make that property more appealing, which obviously is more money out of your pocket as a landlord. So what a lot of people just don't understand is that while landlords would like to pass along all the expenses to their tenants, you can only raise the rent by so much, guys. For example, if you have a rental and you're charging $1,500 a month, and that's the fair market value for that rental unit, okay? And say your expenses went up and you want to charge $1,700 a month now, But you look around and there are 10 other units available that are similar to yours where they're charging $1,500, maybe even $1,450, or right around the same price. How on earth do you think you're going to get $1,700? How do you think you're going to convince a tenant to rent that? You're not going to, like I said, unless you make significant upgrades that make that property worth that extra $200. Also, the other part of this that is not actually true all the time is that mortgage interest and real estate taxes are deductible on income taxes. Okay, as a landlord, you want to deduct all of your expenses, which is true, but only up to a certain point. Like, for example, as a married couple, if you earn more than $150,000 per year, all of the expenses that you have on your rental property, you cannot deduct against your income taxes. And the only time you can deduct those expenses is once you actually sell that property and cash out. Then all those expenses can be deducted at the time of sale. But if you make less than $150,000 a year as a married couple, or I think it's $75,000 or $80,000 if you're single, then you can take those deductions on your income taxes. That is possible. So when you hear this, that, oh, every time the expenses go up, that the landlord's just gonna pass it along to you as a tenant, that is only partially true. They can only pass along expenses that justify what the actual rent price of that property can be. If their expenses go beyond that, then they're most likely going to be looking at a situation where that property remains vacant because they're asking too high of a rent, or they're going to be forced to sell that property because it's going to be no longer profitable. And going back to my original thing I was saying here, those things would be eliminated. You know, a lot of those expenses would be eliminated for landlords, which would make Florida an extremely desirable place to buy real estate if property taxes were to be eliminated. So as much as I like that idea, be careful what you wish for. I'm still on the fence about it. I like the idea. I don't want the government stealing all of our money, for sure. But I also don't want to see, you know, the average home price here in Florida being, you know, $1.5 million. So I don't know. So I know this was a long video, guys, but I really had to get through all of this very important information. So I appreciate you sticking with me to the end. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.